Good evening. In episode 1 we looked at the planet Venus. Now Venus is very bright, you can see it with the naked eye. I'm hoping a few of you went out and tried to spot it after episode 1. You can actually see a number of the planets with the naked eye. Mars, Jupiter and Saturn are all easy to pick out. Unfortunately not this time of the year, they're in a bit of an awkward place. But not everything in the night sky is as bright as the planets. There are things called deep sky objects, so tonight we're going to try and image one of those. I will be using a field flattener, which is basically a telescope adapter for my DSLR that also helps reduce distortion in the field of view. This attaches exactly like a lens to my cheap and cheerful Canon 1000D. I then add a sky glow filter, which helps filter out some of the light pollution. Now, these used to work really well when everywhere was lit by low-pressure sodium vapour. However, now that street lamps are moving over to daylight white LEDs, amateur astronomers are struggling to get rid of this unwanted light, because it's the same wavelength as the objects we want to image. A DSLR isn't the best choice for this task. There are in fact dedicated deep sky cameras that use fans and heat sinks to keep their sensors cool, resulting in a much cleaner picture. However, sadly at present I can't afford one. So for now it's my DSLR that goes into the focuser. So what are deep sky objects? Well, it's a bit of an umbrella term and it covers things like nebulae, galaxies, star clusters, things like that. These are all very faint objects that are outside of our solar system. Our solar system is our sun and the planets that go around it. Okay, relatively speaking, that's really small. Our sun is one of many stars that make up the Milky Way, our galaxy. Within our galaxy, you'll find nebulae. A nebula is a huge cloud of gas and dust. So they're outside our solar system, but inside our galaxy, inside the Milky Way. But looking further afield, we can see outside of the Milky Way, we can see other galaxies. A galaxy, to remind you, is a huge collection of stars, vast collection of stars, all sort of gravitationally bound. Ours is the Milky Way, but there's countless more out there. Tonight, we're going to have a go at imaging one of those galaxies. Yeah, that'll do. The galaxy we're looking for tonight is called M109. Now, how do we find M109? Because like all deep sky objects, it is very faint. Even through a telescope, these things often only look like smudges. So it's quite hard to pick out, especially if your sky isn't that dark. I live in a town and the sky is never properly dark. So how do you find a faint object in a sky that's not all that dark? Well, there's two ways. The first way is to cheat, like I'm doing, which is to use a go-to mount. You just type in what you're looking for and it swings around and points at it. And the second way, the correct way, is to use a map. Luckily for us, M109 is near a pretty bright star in Ursa Major. Here's that bright star, and M109 is just there. So all we have to do is slew the scope to this bright star here, and then track a tiny bit down and a tiny bit left, and we'll be on M109. So we've got the camera in, we're going to do some imaging, and what we do is we take a load of photos and again we stack them. This time it's not to get rid of the atmospheric wibble, it's to kind of reduce the noise floor, because long exposures, often at a high sensitivity in the camera, bring in a lot of background noise. So by stacking loads of frames together, we can reduce this noise floor and tease out some of the really faint detail. Okay, so the scope is now locked onto M109, and the DSLR that's attached to it is going to take a series of 20-second exposures. It's going to do that all night long. The reason I take so many is because, one, it reduces the noise floor, but two, you will have to throw quite a few away. Think of it this way, that is a DSLR attached to the equivalent of a 1800mm lens. And I'm asking it to move with the sky whilst the sky appears to move over us at 15 degrees an hour. That's a big ask on that mount. The motors on that mount have to work really perfectly, and inevitably they don't. There's a little bit of wibble, there's a little bit of give, and some of those exposures will end up being blurred, stars will trail, there'll be a bit of wobble. So we may well throw away quite a lot because it's not the best mount in the world, unfortunately. But it's what we've got. So we'll have a look at that tomorrow, but for now I'm going to head in and have a hot chocolate or something like that. Once all the data's been captured, I begin by manually going through all of the photos taken and deleting any that don't quite cut the mustard. The ones that remain are loaded into a free program called Deep Sky Stacker that aligns and then stacks those images. After stacking, there's a bit of post-processing. I remove any artifacts introduced by the stack and also clean up any noise as best I can. I use both Photoshop and Lightroom for this. Then that's it. And here is our photo of M109, also known as the vacuum cleaner galaxy apparently, though I've no idea why. Unfortunately, most deep sky objects are just too faint to be seen with the naked eye. You do need binoculars or a telescope. There are, however, a couple that can be seen, so if the sky is dark enough and clear enough, there's one that I'd like you to try and see if you can spot. We're starting with the constellation of Orion. Now, Orion will be seen sort of to the southwest and moving further west as the night goes on, so look around sunset in the sort of southwest and you should spot the familiar constellation of Orion. Now, you're looking for Orion's belt, that's these three stars in the middle here. If you move down from those three stars, you should see a fuzzy patch. Now that is the Great Orion Nebula. It's a stellar nursery. It's where stars are currently being born. It's a huge cloud of gas and dust, and with a telescope it looks really quite incredible. But that's one that you might be able to spot just with the naked eye. Now, onto the other challenge I set you. In my previous episode, I asked you to try and spot the station. And a number of you managed it. I got several messages saying you'd seen it. We even got this fantastic photo from a little boy called John, who'd managed to photograph the very slender crescent moon and Venus, and that trail there, that's the International Space Station moving overhead. Fantastic photo, really tremendous. And here's what I saw. Right, the ISS is coming overhead right now. It is moving, if you look over there, if you can see it on your monitor, between the moon and Venus. Heading up towards Venus. I think it will get brighter as it goes. On board there are 3 people at the moment. There are 2 NASA astronauts and 1 Russian cosmonaut. And you can see it now just passing above Venus. Let's zoom in a bit. Well, that's it for this episode of Look Up in the Sky. I hope you'll join me for our next episode, which I'm afraid will be our last episode, and it will be on the moon. So until next time, good night.